Archibald Philip Primrose, 5th Earl of Rosebery, 1st Earl of Midlothian, KG, KT. PC was a Scottish Liberal statesman who served as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from the 5th of March 1894 to the 22nd of June 1895. Between the death of his father, in 1851, and the death of his grandfather, the 4th Earl, in 1868, he was known by the courtesy title of Lord Dalmeny. Rosebery first came to national attention in 1879 to 1880 by sponsoring the successful Midlothian campaign of William Ewart Gladstone. He briefly was in charge of Scottish affairs. This finest performance in office came as chairman of the London County Council in 1889. He entered the cabinet in 1885 and served twice as foreign minister, paying special attention to French and German affairs. He succeeded Gladstone as Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Party in 1894. The Liberals lost the 1895 election. He resigned the party leadership in 1896 and never again held political office. He was widely known as a brilliant orator, an outstanding sportsman and marksman, a writer and historian, connoisseur and collector. All of these activities attracted him more than politics, which grew boring and unattractive. Furthermore, he drifted to the right of the Liberal Party and became a bitter critic of its policies. Winston Churchill, observing that he never adapted to democratic electoral competition, quipped, "He would not stoop, he did not conquer." Rosebery was a liberal imperialist who favored strong national defense and imperialism abroad and social reform at home, while being solidly anti-socialist. Historians judge him a failure as foreign minister and as prime minister. Origins and early life. Archibald Philip Primrose was born on the 7th of May 1847 in his parents' house in Charles Street, Mayfair, London. His father was Archibald Primrose, Lord Dalmeny, son and heir apparent to Archibald Primrose, 4th Earl of Rosebery, whom he predeceased. Lord Dalmeny was a courtesy title used by the Earl's eldest son and heir apparent during the Earl's lifetime, and was one of the Earl's lesser Scottish titles. Lord Dalmeny was MP for Stirling from 1832 to 1847 and served as First Lord of the Admiralty under Lord Melbourne. Rosebery's mother was Lady Wilhelmina Stanhope, a historian who later wrote under her second married name, the Duchess of Cleveland, a daughter of Philip Stanhope, 4th Earl Stanhope. Lord Dalmeny died on the 23rd of January 1851, having predeceased his father when the courtesy title passed to his son, the future Rosebery, is the new heir to the earldom. In 1854 his mother remarried to Lord Harry Vane. The relationship between mother and son was very poor. His elder and favourite sister Lady Leconfield was the wife of Henry Wyndham, 2nd Baron Leconfield. Education and youth. Dalmeny attended preparatory schools in Hertfordshire and Brighton and then Eton, which he attended between 1860 and 1863. He then went to Brighton College between 1863 and 1865. His remarkable intellect, displayed in debates, attracted the attention of William Johnson Corey, Michael Matthew Caley's Secreted Desires, The Major Uranians, Hopkins, Pater and Wilde explores the personal relationship. Dalmeny proceeded to Christ Church, Oxford, through the years 1865 until 1869. Remarkably, the three prime ministers from 1880 to 1902, namely Gladstone, Salisbury and Rosebery, all attended both Eton and Christ Church. Whilst at Christ Church, in 1868, Dalmeny bought a horse named Ladders, although a rule banned undergraduates from owning horses. When he was found out, he was offered a choice to sell the horse or to give up his studies. He chose the latter, and subsequently subsequently was a prominent figure in British horse racing for 40 years. Rosebery toured the United States in 1873, 1874 and 1876. He was pressed to marry Marie Fox, the 16-year-old adopted daughter of Henry Fox, 4th Baron Holland. She declined him and later married Prince Louis of Liechtenstein. Succession to earldom. When his grandfather died in 1868, Dalmeny became 5th Earl of Rosebery. The earldom did not, however, entitle Archibald Primrose to sit in the House of Lords, nor disqualify him from sitting in the House of Commons, as the title is part of the old peerage of Scotland, from which 16 members were elected to sit in the Lords for each session of Parliament. However, in 1828, Rosebery's grandfather had been created 1st Baron Rosebery in the peerage of the United Kingdom, which did entitle Rosebery to sit in the Lords like all peers of the United Kingdom, and barred him from a career in the House of Commons. Career. Rosebery is reputed to have said that he had 3 aims in life: to win the Derby, to marry an heiress, and to become Prime Minister. He managed all 3. Early political career. At Eton, Rosebery notably attacked Charles I of England for his despotism, and went on to praise his Whig forebears. His ancestor, James Stanhope, 1st Earl Stanhope, was a minister to George I of Great Britain. Benjamin Disraeli often met with Rosebery in the 1870s to try to recruit him for his party, but this proved futile. Disraeli's major rival, William Ewart Gladstone, also pursued Rosebery, with considerable success, as part of the Liberal plan to get Gladstone to be MP for Midlothian. Rosebery sponsored and largely ran the Midlothian campaign of 1879. He based this on what he had observed in elections in the United States. Gladstone spoke from open-deck trains, and gathered mass support. In 1880, he was duly elected member for Midlothian and returned to the premiership. Rosebery served as Foreign Secretary in Gladstone's brief Third Ministry, 1886. He served as the first chairman of the London County Council, set up by the Conservatives in 1889. Rosebery Avenue in Clerkenwell is named after him. He served as president of the first day of the 1890 Cooperative Congress. Rosebery's second period as Foreign Secretary, 1892 to 1894, predominantly involved quarrels with France over Uganda. To quote his hero Napoleon, Rosebery thought that the master of Egypt is the master of India. Thus he pursued the policy of expansion in Africa. Rosebery helped Gladstone's second Home Rule Bill in the House of Lords. Nevertheless, it was defeated overwhelmingly in the autumn of 1893. The first bill, in 1886, had been defeated in the House of Commons. Prime Minister. Rosebery became a leader of the liberal imperialist faction of the Liberal Party, and when Gladstone retired, in 1894, Rosebery succeeded him as Prime Minister, much to the disgust of Sir William Harcourt, the Chancellor of the Exchequer and leader of the more left-wing Liberals. Rosebery's selection was largely because Queen Victoria disliked most of the other leading Liberals. Rosebery was in Lords, but Harcourt controlled the House, where he often undercut the Prime Minister. Rosebery's government was largely unsuccessful. He took a strongly pro-Armenian and anti-Turkish policy, but was unable to do anything to stop the massacres of Armenians. His designs in foreign policy, such as expansion of the fleet, were defeated by disagreements within the Liberal Party. He angered all the European powers. The Unionist-dominated House of Lords stopped the whole of the Liberals' domestic legislation. The strongest figure in the cabinet was Rosebery's rival, Harcourt. He and his son Louis were perennial critics of Rosebery's policies. There were two future prime ministers in the cabinet: Home Secretary H.H. Asquith, and Secretary of State for War Henry Campbell Bannerman. Rosebery rapidly lost interest in running the government. In the last year of his premiership, he was increasingly haggard. He suffered insomnia due to the continual dissension in his cabinet. On the 21st of June 1895, the government lost a vote in Committee on Army Supply by just 7 votes. While this might have been treated merely as a vote of no confidence in Secretary for War Campbell Bannerman, Rosebery chose to treat it as a vote of censure on his government. On the 22nd of June, he and his ministers tendered the resignations to the Queen, who invited the Unionist leader, Lord Salisbury, to form a government. The following month, the Unionists won a crushing victory in the 1895 general election, and held power for 10 years under Salisbury and Arthur Balfour. Rosebery remained the Liberal leader for another year, then permanently retired from politics. Lord Rosebery's government, March 1894–June 1895. Lord Rosebery, First Lord of the Treasury, Lord President of the Council, and Leader of the House of Lords. Lord Herschel, Lord Chancellor. Lord Tweedmouth, Lord Privy Seal. H. Asquith, Secretary of State for the Home Department. Lord Kimberley, Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs. Lord Ripon, Secretary of State for the Colonies. Sir Henry Campbell Bannerman, Secretary of State for War. Sir Henry Hartley Fowler, Secretary of State for India. Sir William Harcourt, Chancellor of the Exchequer and Leader of the House of Commons. Lord Spencer, First Lord of the Admiralty. Anthony John Mundela, President of the Board of Trade. Arnold Morley, Postmaster General. George John Shaw Lefevre, President of the Local Government Board. James Bryce, Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. John Morley, Chief Secretary for Ireland. Sir George Otto Trevelyan, Secretary for Scotland. Sir Arthur Herbert Dyke Acland, Vice President of the Council. Changes May 1894. James Bryce succeeds A. J. Mundela at the Board of Trade. Lord Tweedmouth succeeds Bryce at the Duchy of Lancaster, remaining also Lord Privy Seal. Later life. Liberal imperialists. Rosebery resigned as leader of the Liberal Party on 6 October 1896, to be succeeded by Harcourt, and gradually moved further and further from the mainstream of the party, with the Liberals in opposition divided over the Boer War, which started in 1899. Rosebery, although officially politically inactive, emerged as the head of the Liberal Imperialists faction of the party, opposed to Irish Home Rule and the Boer War policies of the party leader Sir Henry Campbell Bannerman. Rosebery's acolytes, including H. Asquith and Edward Grey, regularly implored him to return as party leader, and even Campbell Bannerman said he would serve under Rosebery if he accepted fundamental Liberal Party doctrine. In a much-trailed speech to the Chesterfield Liberal Association in December 1901, Rosebery was widely expected to announce his return, but instead delivered what Harcourt's son and private secretary Lelou described as an insult to the whole past of the Liberal Party, by telling the party to clean its slate. Quote, in 1902, Rosebery was installed as president of the newly formed Liberal League, which superseded the Liberal Imperialist League and counted, amongst its vice-presidents, Asquith and Grey. 1905 onwards, Rosebery's positions made it impossible to join the Liberal government that returned to power in 1905. Rosebery turned to writing, including biographies of Lord Chatham, Pitt the Younger, Napoleon, and Lord Randolph Churchill. Another one of his passionate interests was the collecting of rare books. The last years of his political life saw Rosebery become a purely negative critic of the Liberal governments of Campbell Bannerman and Asquith. His crusade for freedom as against bureaucracy, for freedom as against democratic tyranny, for freedom as against class legislation, and for freedom as against socialism was a lonely one, conducted from the crossbenches in the Lords. He joined the die-hard Unionist peers in attacking Lloyd George's redistributive People's Budget in 1909, but stopped short of voting against the measure for fear of bringing retribution upon the Lords. The crisis provoked by the Lords' rejection of the budget encouraged him to reintroduce his resolutions for Lords' reform, but they were lost with the dissolution of Parliament in December 1910. After assaulting the ill-judged, revolutionary and partisan terms of the 1911 Parliament Bill, which proposed to curb the Lords' veto, he voted with the government in what proved to be his last appearance in the House of Lords. This was effectively the end of his public life, though he made several public appearances to support the war effort after 1914 and sponsored a Bantam Battalion in 1915. Though Lloyd George offered him a high post not involving departmental labor to augment his 1916 coalition, Rosebery declined to serve. Death and burial. The last year of the war was clouded by two personal tragedies: his son Neil's death in Palestine in November 1917 and Rosebery's own stroke a few days before the armistice. He regained his mental powers, but his movement, hearing, and sight remained impaired for the rest of his life. His sister Constance described his last years as a life of weariness, of total inactivity, and at the last of almost blindness. John Buchan remembered him in his last month of life, crushed by bodily weakness, and sunk in sad and silent meditations. Rosebery died at the Durdens, Epsom, Surrey, on the 21st of May 1929, to the accompaniment, as he had requested, of a gramophone recording of the Eton boating song. Survived by 3 of his 4 children, he was buried in the small church at Dalmeny. His estate was probated at £1,500,122 3s. 6d, and he was thus the richest Prime Minister ever, followed by Salisbury, then by Palmerston. Marriage. On the 20th of March 1878, in the Board of Guardians in Mount Street, London, at the age of 31, Rosebery married the 27-year-old Hannah de Rothschild, only child and sole heiress of the Jewish banker Mayer Amschel de Rothschild, and the wealthiest British heiress of her day. Her father had died 4 years previously in 1874, and bequeathed to her the bulk of his estate. Later on the same day, the marriage was blessed in a Christian ceremony in Christchurch, Down Street, Piccadilly. In January 1878, Rosebery had told a friend that he found Hannah very simple, very unspoilt, very clever, very warm-hearted and very shy. I never knew such a beautiful character. Both Queen Victoria's son, the Prince of Wales, and her cousin, the Army Commander George, Duke of Cambridge, attended the ceremony. Hannah's death in 1890 from typhoid, compounded by Bright's disease, left him distraught. Following his wife's death, it was speculated that Rosebery intended to marry the widowed Princess Helena, Duchess of Albany, widow of Prince Leopold, Duke of Albany, 4th son of Queen Victoria. It was also speculated that Rosebery was bisexual. Like Oscar Wilde, he was hounded by John Douglas, 9th Marquis of Queensberry, for his association with Francis Douglas, Viscount Drumlanrig, one of Queensberry's sons, who was his private secretary. Progeny. By his wife Hannah de Rothschild, Rosebery had 4 children, with whom he loved to play, according to Margot Asquith, 2 sons and 2 daughters. Sons Albert Edward Harry Mayer Archibald Primrose, 6th Earl of Rosebery, known as Harry, eldest son and heir, who served as Scottish Secretary in 1945. Neil James Archibald Primrose, killed in action in Palestine. He married Lady Victoria Stanley, by whom he had progeny including Ruth Wood, Countess of Halifax. Daughters Sybil Myra Caroline Primrose, who married General Sir Charles Grant. Margaret Etrenne Hannah Primrose, who in 1899 married Robert Crewe Milnes, 1st Marquess of Crewe. Such was her father's popularity that London came to a standstill for the wedding. Sporting interests: horse racing. As a result of his marriage to Hannah de Rothschild, Rosebery acquired the Mentmore Towers estate and Mentmore Stud near Leighton Buzzard, which had been built by Mayor Amschel de Rothschild. Rosebery built another stable and stud near Mentmore Towers at Crafton, Buckinghamshire, called Crafton Stud. Rosebery won several of the 5 English classic races. His most famous horses were Ladis, who won the 1894 Derby, Savisto, who did it again in 1895, and Cicero in 1905. Football: Rosebery became the first president of the London Scottish Rugby Football Club in 1878. Also developed a keen interest in association football and was an early patron of the sport in Scotland. In 1882, he donated a trophy, the Rosebery Charity Cup, to be competed for by clubs under the jurisdiction of the East of Scotland Football Association. The competition lasted over 60 years and raised thousands of pounds for charities in the Edinburgh area. Rosebery also became honorary president of the National Scottish Football Association, with the representative Scotland national team, and honorary president of Heart of Midlothian FC. The national team occasionally forsaking the traditional dark blue shirts for his traditional racing colours of primrose and pink. This occurred 9 times during Rosebery's lifetime, most notably for the 1900 British Home Championship match against England, which the Scots won 4-1. These colours were used for the away kit of the Scottish national team in 2014 and the Heart of Midlothian's away colours for season 2016-17. Literary interests: he was a keen collector of fine books and amassed an excellent library. It was sold on the 29th of October 2009 at Sotheby's, New Bond Street. Rosebery unveiled the statue of Robert Burns in Dumfries on the 6th of April 1882. Landholdings: Rosebery was the owner of 12 houses. By marriage, he acquired Mentmore Towers in Buckinghamshire, a huge neo-Renaissance stately home, sold in the 1970s. Number 40, Piccadilly, in London. With his fortune, he bought a shooting lodge at Carrington in Midlothian, a Georgian villa at Poswick in Norfolk. In 1897, he bought Villa della Gente in Posillipo, overlooking the Bay of Naples, currently an official residence of the President of the Italian Republic, still known as Villa Rosebery. 38 Berkeley Square, London. The Durdens, Epsom, where he died in 1929. As Earl of Rosebery, he was laird of Dalmeny House on the banks of the Firth of Forth, Barnbougle Castle in the grounds of Dalmeny Estate, used by Rosebery for privacy. He rented a home in Randolph Crescent, Edinburgh, during World War I. Lansdowne House, in London, from the Marquess of Lansdowne. Additionally, he rented Holland House for a period before its owner, Henry Vassall Fox, 3rd Baron Holland, reached adulthood. Place name tributes: the Oatlands area in the south side of Glasgow was laid out in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, contemporary with Rosebery's most prominent period. Several of the street names have an association with him or areas around his estate to the northwest of Edinburgh: Rosebery Street, Dalmeny Street, Queensferry Street, Granton Street and Cramond Street. Rosebery, New South Wales, a suburb of Sydney, is named after him. A major street, Dalmeny Avenue, runs through the area. Rosebery, Tasmania is also named after him, via the name of a mining company. Dalmeny, New South Wales, a suburb on the New South Wales south coast, is named after him. Rosebery Avenue in the suburb of South Perth, Western Australia, is also named after him. The former township of Rosebery in South Australia was named for him, as was modern-day Rosebery Lane in Collinswood.